Hi, welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is why I disagree with the Duran, and I'm specifically mentioning the video that was released yesterday. It's called The Fury of Phone Calls, Warning of Dirty Bombs from Sergei Shoigu. Well, as you have noticed, I have been disagreeing with Alexandra and Alex for a while now. And unfortunately, they do produce a lot of videos, and unfortunately, some of them have making statements which is not always supported by facts. And, well, there's always questions that do come up. And that's one of the main reasons why we make videos, or why I make the videos, in order to ask the questions. Now, this whole matter, or this whole video of them, goes basically about dirty bombs and some phone calls that happen between ministers of defense, or the military, if you want to call it. And, well, then that's Duran makes a lot of conclusions, which I totally cannot agree. But it is a possibility that what they say, but I would like to present a different narrative to the events. Firstly, just to make it clear that what is a dirty bomb? A dirty bomb is basically radioactive material that is packaged together with a certain explosive, TNT, let's call it for clarity or ease of description, like a TNT or plastic explosives. So what you will have is you will have a core of plastic explosives, and then fill the canister up with radioactive material, which is plentiful in Ukraine, because they have nuclear reactors and they can use some of the spent fuel rods. But what it really does, it's not an atomic weapon. It doesn't create an atomic fission reaction rather. So it doesn't generate a bigger explosions than what the original plastic explosive can handle. Well, the only thing that it does is to distribute or to pulverize the radioactive material and then contaminate an environment. And therefore, the dirty bomb has no military use. It has no benefit for any military to use. It's a pure weapon for terrorists. And the application usually of a dirty bomb is to let it explode in a residential area or high civilian concentrations, in order not to kill them by the blast, but to kill them later on with radiation and contaminate that area with radioactive material. So the effect would be very similar to an explosion like Chernobyl, to a smaller level. It will be much more localized, but it will reduce a lot of radioactive clouds of dust, which can travel certain distances and can contaminate other areas. So as you can see, it doesn't yield a lot of explosive force, except for the original plastic or explosive that is present at this dirty bomb. Now, also, if you read up a little bit, all the Russians' tanks, or call it rather the Soviet tanks, because I did make a program on the T-55, and even the T-55 could handle a 10-kiloton nuclear bomb 300 meters from the tank, and the tank will survive. But the crew won't. The crew need a distance of 700 meters from the center of the radioactive or the nuclear bomb. And most tactical nuclear bombs are between 5 kilotons and 100 kilotons. Now, the 100 ones are big ones then. But if you want to really use it in a theater of war, then you would use tactical nuclear weapons in the region of between 10 and maybe 20 kilotons. But it wouldn't really matter because most of the tanks and APCs and self-propelled artillery pieces and so on will be able to withstand any nuclear attack. So one has to ask your question is, why would anybody use a tactical nuclear bomb? And that would be mainly used against infantry or unprotected soldiers. But even if they are in properly fortified positions like trenches and so on, they might be able to survive some of the tactical nuclear blast. And again, then one has to ask yourself why. It is, nobody really wants it, and everybody knows that once nuclear weapons are used, there is no turnaround. You have crossed the red line, and will probably escalate to intercontinental ballistics, and then all-out nuclear war, and then Armageddon, and then the end of the world. Remember, nuclear weapons are there solely for the purpose of mutual assured destruction. It's a threat, not an actual weapon. So one can talk about bluffs and so on, but the consequences of bluffing with these type of weapons is highly risky, and it will probably, with a high degree of probability, turn against you. So let's continue with the discussion on why I actually disagree with Duran. And the main purpose here is that there were a lot of phone calls happening between the military commanders. And based on that, they are presenting a theory. Now, I cannot totally agree with that. I do partially agree with their statements. Firstly, the Americans and the Russians and the British military haven't talked for a long time. They have cut off all communications, and that is a very dangerous position. Now, Ben Wallace from the UK, did go to the US during the times where there were political crises with Liz Truss, the leadership, the mini budget, etc., etc., etc. And one would have assumed that he would be present, but he wasn't. He did go to America, and he did make the statement that he had to go because communication lines were compromised, and therefore they had to go to America in person. Now, Alexander talks about this is a huge thing. The British military intelligence will never admit to any breach of their communication, and even if they had, it's not too difficult to change it and to resecure the communication channels. So I think that Ben Wallace went actually to America because there was a change on the military front, or the military theater of Russia, and that these matters couldn't be discussed over a telephone or internet connection. The data that would have been presented to him couldn't have been done that. Maybe it's not efficient. So a personal visit is a much more efficient way of having a proper planning or strategic discussions on what to go forward. So that's why one of the reasons why I think that Ben Wallace went there. And Britain is in any case a staunch supporter of Ukraine, and they are the lapdogs of America, so I'm not totally surprised about that. In any case, so he went about, Ben Wallace and Chuck Sullivan had about on the 18th of October. Just remember the dates, 18th of October. And then they had a lot of discussions. And then Ben Wallace came back, and then he talked about the incident where a Russian fighter has fired a missile at an RAF aircraft. And just for the sakes, that incident only happened on the 29th of September, which is nearly 19 days, 20 days before Ben Wallace went to the US. In any case, he came back, and on the 20th, he had a speech in the House of Commons where he explained to the MPs that Russia said that that was an accidental firing and that it should not be nobody should really worry about this incident. It does happen, and it has happened before, and basically well, they shouldn't forget about it, but it's not a big thing. And that was on the 20th. Only on the 21st of October did Lloyd Austin phone Sergei Shoigu for the first time in a very long time. So that was after the visit and after the return of Ben Wallace. Now, one has to ask yourself, why was Ben Wallace even in the US, and what were they discussing? But I will get to that just now. So what effectively has happened is that Lloyd Austin actually phoned Sergei, and it was initiated from the US. So what it seems to me is that the Americans have decided to reopen the communication channels between the military of the NATO and of Russia, and NATO by implication the US. So it was a re-establishment of communications due to the events that I will discuss just now. And that was on the 21st. No, what was it? Yeah, 21st. And then, let me get the dates right. And then on the 23rd, that's 2 days later, Sergei Shoigu phoned the minister of, phoned a Turkish minister, counterpart. He found the French, the Turkish defense minister, which was Hulusi Akar, the French defense minister, Sebastian Lecornu, and then Ben Wallace again. And then he informed them that basically the Ukrainians were in advanced stage, or in the final stages of assembling a dirty bomb. Now, Alexander tries to make a connection between that and the previous discussion with Lloyd Austin and the visit of Ben Wallace to the US and so forth, but I can't agree with that type of statements. I believe that the Russian intelligence, which has infiltrated the Ukrainians, have obtained information that Ukraine might assemble a dirty bomb and then might use it and then blame Russia. Now, this thing doesn't make me sense, but let's just continue. Then on the 24th, then the Russian chief of defense, General Valery Gerasimov, then talked to the US chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, and he also talked about again to the British counterpart, Admiral Sir Tony Radakin. So again, this time a military commander of the Russians talked to his counterparts in in the UK and in the US. Again, talking about the dirty bomb. And then on the 24th of October, Vasily Nebenzia, I'm bad with names. Nebenzia, that's the Russian representative to the UN, wrote a letter to the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and also the members of the Security Council, again warning or informing them of the information they got about the dirty bomb. And he also insisted on on a Security Council meeting, which was supposed to be held today, Tuesday. So it seems to me that the Russians' information is fairly solid, because why otherwise would they warn all the relevant people, not only the ministers, but also the military personnel, and of this type of event. So I think the accusation of the Russians are fairly accurately, and the information provided is fairly accurate. But I cannot see the reason why they can do it, or what is the purpose of doing such a dirty bomb, because again, it has no military use or purpose or benefit. It will contaminate a certain part of the Ukrainian soil, if you want to call it. And then most important about this whole matter is that it will not be seen as the use of a nuclear or a tactical weapon. And like I explained, it's not a nuclear reaction, so it's not a nuclear bomb. And the Americans and the Russians have satellites in orbit that can detect nuclear explosions. So this means they can accurately determine whether that incident would have been a nuclear explosion, and they would have immediately dismissed it, and they wouldn't have followed Zelensky, and that's the end of the day. In fact, just for interest's sakes, during the first Gulf War, the Americans controlled the media 100%. As far as I remember, no photo released by the press was not approved by the Pentagon. But what there came out some rumors that the signature of an atomic bomb was recorded during the Iraq-Kuwait Gulf War I. It was, well, a very smaller one, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Americans have used a tactical nuclear bomb during the first Gulf War, because the signature of that explosion indicated a nuclear fission reaction. And there were also rumors that the Iraqi soldiers died in their trenches, and all what the Americans did is they brought in bulldozers and buried those soldiers inside their own trenches. Yeah, whether that's true, I don't know, but I'm fairly confident about that nuclear explosion signature. I give that quite a high probability of being used. In any case, so coming back to the narrative about the dirty bomb, the narrative is again contradictory. On the one hand, we accuse Zelensky of not being in charge, and we say that the NATO generals are in the command, and that they guide the Ukrainian military and control Zelensky. That is what we say on the one side. But on the other side, then we say, but Zelensky is now trying to explode a nuclear or a dirty bomb, which will have no use and will not be recognized by anybody else. So it would be a futile exercise. It will be destructive. It will cross a certain red line for a community, for the international community. So it will have no benefit. So again, what I more see it is that the offense was a limited operation where a fairly equivalent, yes, we are talking always that the Ukrainian army was always bigger and that the Russians were outnumbered. But according to the own numbers of Russian commanders, which I have discussed in a different video, they were more or less equal. The Ukrainians had more or less 200,000 soldiers, and the Russians had about 200,000 soldiers together with the militia of the Donbass. But unfortunately, they went on the war and they conquered territories and so on. It went on. But in the meantime, the Ukrainians were increasing the number of their soldiers, and the balance became disturbed. And then Ukraine, we all know, attacked Kherson and Lyman and Lysium, and in the north gained significant successes with the attack. Yes, pro-Panthers were riding it off, but still they progressed, and it showed a weakness in the Russian defense due to a lack of manpower in that area. And that prompted the Russians or Putin to start a limited mobilization in order to restore the balance. They also, like I said, they incorporated the 4 provinces, and now the matter has changed from a supportive role to a role of full-scale war. Not full-scale, limited scale of war against the Ukrainians. And then the offenses are more or less the line of contacts or the front is fairly stable, although there are still being some progress made by the Ukrainian forces, but it's a little bit limited. They are doing prodding the defenses of the Russians, see where they are weak, and they have penetrated some of the defenses, but they were repelled and driven back. And then something totally different happened. Then there was a sabotage of the Kerch Bridge, we call it the Kriberian Bridge, and that was followed by a significant missile attack by the Russians on the infrastructure of the Ukraine. And what I believe is that the Americans and NATO saw this as a very similar reaction. Well, firstly, they saw what the capabilities were of the Russians. They also noticed that the Russian has now become not angry, but a little bit more aggressive. And as usually happens, another example is like the Israelis against the Palestinians. The Palestinians will maybe explode one bomb, which kills maybe nobody, and then the Israelis retaliate with an effect of 10 times or 50 times more. And they kill a lot of Palestinians and destroy a lot of houses. So the retaliation is usually a lot more than the initial attack. And it's the same here. The attack on the Kerch Bridge was not that effective, but the retaliation was orders more. So whatever the Ukrainians will do, say they will blow up the dam, in the Kherson region, or say the Ukrainians will explode a dirty bomb, then the reaction of the Russians will be severely a lot more. They will then destroy dams on the west of Ukraine. They will destroy the water sources of the civilian. Just remember, until now, this retaliation was only limited to thermal power stations and to transformers and distribution networks. the Russians did not bomb any coal-fired power stations or nuclear-powered power stations. They only did the thermal ones. And I think they destroyed partial, they let the Ukrainians suffer a little bit more, but it was a warning also. And I think that the US saw that, and that is why Ben Wallace was called to America to discuss it more in detail and see what they can do. Because we all know that currently the West has, or the Western supplied weapons have become a very reduced or limited. The Americans do still support them, but not that much. The British people limited. The French have committed again a little bit of weaponry, and the Germans, well, they gave Ukraine 1 air defense systems with 3 more on the way. And the West has significant problems economically wise. So maybe the US have now realized that this war cannot be won. They didn't achieve their objective by destroying the Russian economy. They are not successful on a military front. The Russians now have mobilized, and there will be a big offensive in the winter by the Russians. So I think they start to realize slowly but surely that this operation has lost, is actually lost, and it's a done deal. And I just would remind or inform you that firstly, there was a study done by the German military, and it was found that the German military only has 2 days worth of ammunition to fight, only enough ammunition to fight 2 days of a war. So they are totally understocked. And now Olaf Scholz has, not announced, but the insiders have leaked information that this 100 billion investment that Olaf Scholz said that he would do to build up a German army is now under huge threat, and it will be rolled back because they cannot afford it. And not only the new weapons, but the weapons that were already basically earmarked for the German enemies, like the Eurofighters and some corvettes and some tanks and stuff like that. Those projects are all now under threat, and I think because the Germans don't have any money. And you will see the same problem in Britain now. Initially, yes, they're all pro-Ukraine, they all want to do support Ukraine, but the initial with Liz Truss was that she would continue financing the military, and so they will push up the military expenditure up to 3% by 2030, I think. And basically it was all hunky-dory until Jeremy Hunt changed the budget. And according to what I understand is that Sunak is also not a big military fan. So the spending, it looks like the spending on the military in Britain is also going to be reduced. They just have too much financial problems. They don't have enough money to continue bailing out Ukraine. The problem is that at the beginning of the war, there were no negotiations, and there was a hope for that they could reach an agreement, but then Boris Johnson went to Kiev and told Zelensky, no, we can't, you shouldn't make any agreements. We will support you until the end. And that's why I always say that Zelensky is not asking for support, but demanding support, which he has been getting until now. And then there's also news that about 30 Democratic senators, I believe, have written a letter to Joe Biden that says that America must start negotiating for peace. And the response from Joe Biden was more or less that no, they're going to continue, but you know, for Joe Biden, and you know the Americans, they can quickly change their mind. And well, he doesn't want to really lose face. And being senile in any case, what else would one expect? Then also Macron made in a recent statement, I think the last week or so, or weekend, again, that they should start negotiating peace with Russia. And then as a half-hearted tale, just to be, not to be cancelled, he said, yeah, but it must be with a withdrawal of Russia from the four Oblast republics, which we all know is not going to happen. But it's, well, like I said, was a half-hearted end of the speech type of announcement. So we're seeing all more and more and more, sort of not cracks, but the slowly dawning of reality in the Western nations. And as I've explained also, they might be already busy with another proxy theater of war, maybe in Armenia, Azerbaijan, maybe in Taiwan. So one has to see what they are doing. It's not going to be over in any case in a week or day or so. It's going to take a couple of months. So there's still a lot of time that things will be developed. Hopefully the West is now seeing that they are supporting a lost cause and that they really can't afford it, and they start to realize all the other faults. So that's why I basically cannot agree with Alexander. And you have to decide for yourself what is a little bit more credible. I'm not saying I'm right. That is for you to decide. In any case, that's the end of my story for today. Please subscribe to the channel. Share a link to the video so that we can have more subscribers. And hopefully it will help you next time if you look at one of their videos to get a little bit behind the scene. I don't know how to put it in English, but I think you can understand that. So until next time, cheers.